A boy sits at the dinner table. His fork moves food in circles, not to eat, but to distract, to vanish into the rhythm of silence. He knows what happens if he opens his mouth. The room changes. Forks pause. Eyes sharpen. His sister shares her day. She is met with warmth. His brother talks about his grades. He is met with praise. But when his voice enters the air, something shifts. The warmth drains. The air stiffens. His words are not received as words, but as disruptions, as if his existence itself is an offense. So he lowers his head. He swallows silence before he swallows food. He learns that silence is safer than sound, that disappearing is easier than being seen. No one tells him he is hated. No one needs to. It's in the sigh when he enters a room. It's in the way conversations dry up around him. It's in the subtle recoil, too faint to accuse, but too heavy to ignore. These moments are not violent in appearance, but in impact, they are devastating. They tell a child, "You are not welcome here." And this is how hatred hides, not in bruises or broken bones, but in glances that cut without leaving marks. Not in words, but in the absence of words that should have been spoken. Not hated in direct action, not hated in declared hostility, but hated in energy. An atmosphere that clings to the skin, teaching the body to brace as if harm is always seconds away. For many, this is not a story, it is memory. The nervous system remembers what the mind tries to forget. It remembers the chill that spreads when affection never arrives. It remembers how quickly joy dies when you enter the room. Even when no hand is raised, the body still flinches. This is the silent reality of the hated child. A child who does not simply grow up unloved, but grows up convinced they are unworthy of love. That shift is everything, because unloved is a condition, something that might change, but unworthy, that becomes an identity. And once identity fuses with shame, it lingers, shaping every choice, every relationship, every breath of adulthood. And here lies the cruelest truth. For some, this flinch did not even begin at the dinner table. It did not begin with siblings or parents or punishments. For some, the body learned to brace long before the first memory, long before the first cry. Sometimes the hated child's story begins in silence, in the womb itself, where tension and rejection seep into fragile nerves before words ever ride. The hated child doesn't only remember in the mind, their nervous system remembers first. Before thoughts, before explanations, the body keeps score. A child doesn't analyze a sigh or decode the silence after they speak. They feel it. The heart quickens, the stomach knots, the shoulders tense. Each cue, subtle and repeated, writes itself into the body's code. Psychologists have long shown how early rejection shapes development. John Bowlby, the father of attachment theory, called the bond with caregivers a blueprint for all future relationships. When a child receives warmth, the blueprint sketches trust and safety. But when a child is met with coldness or disdain, the blueprint is drawn in fear. Instead of, "I am loved and safe," the nervous system learns, "I must be cautious. I must expect rejection." This isn't just metaphor. Neuroscience reveals that stress in childhood alters the brain itself. Chronic rejection activates the amygdala, the brain's alarm bell, until it becomes hypervigilant, always scanning for threats. Meanwhile, the prefrontal cortex, the region that calms and regulates emotions, falls quiet. The result is a body primed for danger, even in the absence of danger. Imagine sitting at the dinner table with your family, yet your body reacts as if you are surrounded by predators. The hated child flinches at voices that are not loud, faces that are not overtly cruel, moments that to outsiders appear normal. But their body doesn't lie. To the nervous system, coldness is violence, silence is abandonment, comparison is humiliation. Over time, the child stops questioning it. They don't think, "My parent is flawed." They think, "I am flawed." Because for a child, the parent is not just a caregiver. The parent is reality itself. This is the most devastating trick rejection plays. It rewrites the self from the inside out. The hated child doesn't grow up saying, "I wasn't loved enough." They grow up saying, "I must not be lovable at all." And once that lesson is etched into the nervous system, it follows them into every corner of life, into friendships, into intimacy, into work, even into the way they talk to themselves. The body that once braced for rejection never learns to relax. It carries the flinch like a scar under the skin. But some scars run even deeper. For some hated children, the nervous system did not first learn rejection at the dinner table or in the sound of a parent's sigh. Their body learned it earlier, before memory, before language, before birth. Science now shows what poets and philosophers once intuited. The womb is not just biology, it is biography. When a mother is flooded with stress, her body releases hormones like cortisol that pass directly into the fragile bloodstream of the unborn child. Researchers like O'Donnell and Meany, 2017, found that high levels of prenatal stress reshape the developing brain, priming the amygdala for hypervigilance and dulling the pathways meant to calm fear. In other words, long before the first cry, the child's body may already be wired for danger. This is where embodiment begins, or fails to begin. Embodiment is the felt sense of belonging in your own skin, the quiet knowledge that this body is home. But when the womb itself feels hostile, the body can become a place of exile. Instead of, "I am safe here," the first lesson becomes brace. The child doesn't enter the world expecting love, they enter expecting impact, as if life itself is something to endure. Philosopher Simone Weil once wrote that to be rooted is the most important and least recognized need of the human soul. But how does a soul take root when the soil of its first home is saturated with tension? Many hated children grow into adults who seem alive on the outside, but quietly feel absent inside. They walk, they talk, they achieve, but they remain disembodied, unable to rest fully in their own flesh. To them, the body is not sanctuary, but battlefield. This helps explain a paradox. Some hated children do not simply fear rejection from others. They fear presence within themselves. They escape into perfectionism, into people-pleasing, into rebellion, not only to win love, but to avoid the unbearable silence of their own body, because the body holds the original rejection. The womb was their first room, and it whispered, "You are not welcome here." So when they flinch at intimacy or dissociate during conflict or feel strangely unreal even in moments of joy, it is not weakness nor mystery, it is memory. Not the kind you can recall, but the kind etched into the muscles, nerves, and skin. As Bessel van der Kolk wrote, trauma is not just an event in the past. It is the imprint it leaves on the body and the brain. For the hated child, that imprint sometimes predates the first breath. When the body does not feel like home, survival demands disguise. The hated child learns early that who they are is not enough, so they build masks to survive. These masks are not chosen, they are crafted in desperation, forged in silence, worn until the child forgets they are masks at all. Some become perfectionists. They polish every detail, chase flawless achievement, believing that if they can perform without error, they will finally be accepted. Each gold star, each accomplishment, is a shield against the terror of being unwanted. But inside, perfection is not joy, it is bargaining. It is the nervous system whispering, "Maybe, if I'm perfect, I'll deserve to stay." Others become people pleasers. They twist themselves into the shapes others demand, smiling when they want to cry, agreeing when they want to resist. Their body says yes, while their soul screams no. To them, rejection is unbearable, so they trade authenticity for approval, mistaking compliance for connection. They become fluent in reading the moods of others, but illiterate in their own desires. And some go the opposite direction. They become rebels. They armor themselves in defiance, daring the world to push them away so they can say they never cared. But rebellion, too, is a mask. Beneath the fire is the same wound. If I show who I really am, I will be discarded. Psychologists call these strategies compensations, but to the child, they are identities. The perfectionist thinks achievement is the self. The pleaser thinks compliance is the self. The rebel thinks defiance is the self. Yet all of them are mistaken. These are not selves. They are survival mechanisms dressed up as personality. This is why the hated child, now grown, often feels hollow. They can succeed, they can charm, they can fight, but late at night when the masks slip, they feel the old emptiness. Because no matter how convincing the disguise, the body remembers the truth. I was not accepted as I am. And so the child learns to live behind glass, touching the world but never fully touching themselves. They look into mirrors and see only roles, not reality, as if their reflection has been rehearsed, as if life itself is theater. They wear masks so well, even the mirror believes them. Masks may protect a child, but when the child grows into an adult, the masks begin to crack. The perfectionist becomes the high achiever who never feels good enough. The people pleaser becomes the friend who is always available but never authentic. The rebel becomes the partner who pushes away intimacy before intimacy can push them away. From the outside, these lives can look ordinary, even successful, but inside, the old wound hums like a frequency that never fades. These are the invisible scars of the hated child. They don't bleed, they don't show, but they shape everything. The adult sits across from a lover, yet interprets every pause as abandonment. A text left unanswered is not an accident. It is proof that they are unwanted. A criticism from a boss is not feedback. It is confirmation that they are fundamentally flawed. The nervous system, primed in childhood, still scans for danger, still rehearses rejection, even in safe places. What makes these scars cruel is that they disguise themselves as personality. Friends may describe them as sensitive, intense, or independent, but sensitivity is vigilance. Intensity is unprocessed grief. Independence is fear in costume. These are not just traits, they are echoes, and the echoes are loudest in silence. At night, after the performance ends, the hated child turned adult lies awake with the same quiet questions. Am I enough? Do I deserve love? Why does connection feel so difficult? Questions that no amount of accomplishment, no number of relationships, no distraction can silence, because these are not questions of the mind, they are questions of the body. And the body keeps asking until someone finally answers. This is why many adults who once were hated children live as if they are haunted, not by ghosts, but by echoes of rooms they once sat in, glances they once received, sighs that once filled the air. They carry a constant suspicion that something is wrong with them, even when the world tells them otherwise. They may achieve success, build families, even laugh, but beneath the surface they feel like imposters in their own lives. Invisible scars are dangerous precisely because they are invisible. They do not draw sympathy, they do not demand treatment. They hide beneath achievements, relationships, and routines, but they remain and they whisper the same old lie again and again. You are not wanted, you never were. The hated child does not simply grow up and leave their past behind. The past does not live in the calendar, it lives in the body. Long after memories fade, the nervous system keeps the record. This is why a single glance, a single silence, a single delayed reply can strike with the force of abandonment. The body reacts before the mind can reason, because the body is not reacting to the present, it is reacting to history. Psychiatrist Bessel Kolk describes this with haunting clarity. Trauma is not just an event in the past, it is the imprint it leaves on the brain, mind, and body. The hated child becomes the adult who startles at harmless sounds, who feels danger in safe places, who braces in relationships that should bring comfort. They are not overreacting, their body is over-remembering. Neuroscience confirms this haunting truth. Repeated rejection in childhood floods the system with cortisol until the amygdala, the brain's alarm, grows hyperactive, while the prefrontal cortex, the brain's regulator, falls silent. The result is a body wired to anticipate harm, a nervous system that scans like a radar, searching for the threat it already expects to find. To live this way is to carry an invisible weight. Peace feels foreign, and chaos feels familiar. And so the body becomes both prison and prophecy. It traps the hated child in old reflexes, flinching, freezing, pleasing, exploding, and it predicts the future by recreating the past. A critical boss feels like a scolding parent. A distant partner feels like the cold air at the dinner table. Even joy can feel suspicious, like calm before an inevitable storm. What outsiders cannot see is that these reactions are not choices. They are imprints. They are the body keeping the story alive long after the story should have ended. The scars are not on the skin, but in the pulse, in the breath, in the way muscles tense without permission. Trauma writes itself into posture, into tone of voice, into the speed of a heartbeat. This is why hated children grow into adults who sometimes say, "I feel broken, but I don't know why." Because their memories are incomplete, but their body remembers everything. The body is the diary that never forgets, even when the mind tries to turn the page. Silence does not erase, it etches deeper. If the body keeps the story, then healing must also begin in the body. The hated child grows up learning to brace, to flinch, to tighten, to leave themselves before anyone else can. But survival is not the same as living, and so the work of healing is not erasing the past, but returning home to a body that once felt like exile. Psychologists call this reparenting, offering to yourself as an adult what you never received as a child. It is not about blaming endlessly, but about finally becoming the safe parent your younger self needed. Sometimes this begins with the simplest acts: resting without guilt, eating without shame, speaking gently to yourself in moments of failure. These small gestures whisper what was never whispered to you. You are worthy. You are allowed to be here. Another step is naming. Trauma thrives in silence, but when pain is put into words, its grip weakens. Studies on trauma show that articulating past experiences lowers their emotional intensity. Naming transforms chaos into narrative. When the adult can finally say, "I was the unwanted one," the fog clears. The shame that once felt like identity is revealed as a wound, and wounds, once seen, can be tended. But healing cannot stop at words. The hated child's nervous system learned rejection through the body, so the body must learn safety through the body. Somatic therapy pioneer Peter Levine writes, "Trauma is not what happens to us, but what we hold inside in the absence of an empathetic witness. To release it, the body needs new witnesses, new experiences." This might look simple: feet pressing into the ground, a hand resting over the heart, a slow, deliberate breath. Grounding techniques remind the nervous system, there is no threat here. You are safe in this moment. These practices may appear small, even trivial, but for the hated child, they are revolutionary. To rest in one's own skin without bracing, to breathe without rushing, to feel the earth beneath one's feet and trust it will hold, this is to undo years of silent conditioning. It is to teach the body that belonging is not earned by perfection or compliance or rebellion. Belonging can be felt, here and now, in the body itself. And yet healing is not solitary. Just as the wound was formed in relationship, repair often comes through relationship. Safe friendships, compassionate partners, skilled therapists, these offer consistent acceptance, giving the nervous system a chance to rewrite its expectations. Neuroscientists call this earned secure attachment, proof that even if your first bonds were broken, new bonds can rewire the brain towards safety and trust. The hated child's journey back home is not quick, it is not linear, but every act of gentleness toward the body, every moment of presence instead of flight, every word of compassion instead of criticism, is an act of rebellion against the old identity. Each one whispers to the nervous system, the exile is over. You belong here. Why does rejection cut so deeply? Why does the wound of the hated child echo into every corner of life? Because human beings are wired for belonging. Aristotle once called us zoon politikon, social animals. Modern neuroscience confirms what ancient philosophy already knew. Our brains are designed for connection. Loneliness registers in the brain much like physical pain. Rejection activates the same neural pathways as injury. To be unwanted is not just sad, it is biologically wounding. But philosophy offers another angle. Søren Kierkegaard wrote that despair is the sickness of being unable to become oneself. For the hated child, despair begins early. Each sigh, each silence, each comparison says, you are not accepted as you are. And so the child bends themselves into masks: perfection, compliance, rebellion, while the true self waits in exile. This is the deepest tragedy, not that they were unloved, but that they were never allowed to simply be. Yet within this despair lies a paradox. The hated child, precisely because they were forced to question belonging, often grows into an adult capable of extraordinary insight. Their sensitivity to rejection, once survival, can become empathy. Their vigilance, once fear, can become intuition. Their solitude, once emptiness, can become creativity. History is filled with artists, thinkers, and leaders who transformed rejection into vision. This is not to glorify suffering, but to reveal possibility. The wound that once threatened to destroy can also become a doorway to depth. Philosophy reminds us that belonging is not only a gift we wait for, it is a practice we create. Aristotle said community defines us, but Kierkegaard reminds us that the self must also be chosen. To heal is not to erase rejection, but to integrate it. To say, yes, I was unwanted. Yes, it shaped me. But it does not define me. Belonging begins when the hated child, now grown, chooses to belong first to themselves. In this light, embodiment is not just biology, it is philosophy made flesh. To come home to the body is to declare, I am here, I exist, I matter. And from that rootedness, true connection with others becomes possible, not as performance, not as compliance, but as presence. If you carry the echo of the hated child, remember, healing is not just in your thoughts, it is in your body. Each breath, each step, each act of gentleness is a way of saying to that child, you are safe, you are here, you belong, not because you earned it, not because you proved it, but because you exist. And if this truth touched something in you, stay, subscribe, so you don't have to walk this journey alone.